So in previous video, what we have saw that we have to decode this Hibernate code, what we have to write and do in Hibernate in order to get connected with a database through this JDBC API and its implementation. Let's decode this Hibernate code today. So in Hibernate, what we have to do is that we don't have to create the table inside our database by ourselves like we used to do in case of JDBC. Here, Hibernate runtime system will automatically create the table in database, and automatically it will create the columns inside those table. What other things it will do? It will mention the primary key on one of the columns. It will also insert the values inside those columns, which is primary key by itself. Remember the concept of sequence that we used to do in the JDBC or inside the database. What we used to do, we create the sequence, and by automatically in that column, whatever value we are going to provide, automatically corresponding primary key will get generated. So in Hibernate, we also don't have to do that. That will also going to be get automated through Hibernate. So for creating table and columns, primary keys, we have to mention that the table is going to be in database with what name. We have to mention the name of the table inside somewhere in our Hibernate code. We have to mention the name of column, by which name the column is going to get generated. Somewhere we have to mention that on which column we want the primary key to be. Yes, of course, in Hibernate, those things are going to get configured automatically, but we have to mention that what is going to be the name of table, what is going to be the name of column. We have to mention those somewhere. And when we configure those things, later on, we don't have to bother about those things. Those things will automatically get repeated again and again by itself. So where we are going to tell the Hibernate that make this column primary key, make a foreign key relationship between two tables. So in here, what we are doing in case of Hibernate, we are interacting with our classes in Java. So whatever value we are going to provide in these properties of class at the time of making the constructor, those values is going to get inside database. So we are going to configure name of the table, name of the column, primary key inside the file called as Hibernate hbm.xml. We also call this Hibernate mapping document. Let me write it down here. Not this. So this hibernate.hbm.xml is also called as Hibernate mapping document. So inside this Hibernate mapping document, we are going to configure that what is going to be the name of the table inside the database, what is the name of the columns, what columns we are going to make, on which column we will give the primary key constant. In here, what we are doing, we are going to interact with our classes. So what we will do in the Hibernate mapping document, we are going to create the corresponding table of this class. So like here is a class called as customer. We are going to make this customer a table inside database, and inside that database, inside a table, we want columns. So what we will do, we will declare these fields, these properties as a column. So customer become a table and ID become a column. Name is also going to be another column. Likewise, email will become another column. So when we are going to provide the values inside object of this customer class here, when we are going to make the object of this customer class and going to provide the values of this ID, name, email, this will go inside the corresponding columns of a table customer. We are going to make this customer class as a table. So customer become a table, ID become a column inside that table, name become a column inside that table customer, email also become the column inside that customer. So when we are going to provide 10, so on the corresponding column of this ID, 10 will get inserted. When will name gets its values, then this Raj is going to get inserted in the corresponding column of this name. Email also become a column inside this customer table. So when we provide this value of email, then this email is also going to be get inserted inside the corresponding column of this email. So what we do, we declare this customer a table and make the properties of this class customer columns. So whenever we are going to provide the values in argument of this object of customer, these values are by default going to get inserted in the corresponding columns. How easy it becomes in the case of Hibernate to do this. Our table got created by default through Hibernate. Columns will get generated through the Hibernate. Values will get inserted inside those corresponding columns of these properties through the Hibernate. So this is what we do in Hibernate mapping. We will map the class with the corresponding table that we want to generate. Inside the Hibernate mapping document, we are going to mention that for this customer, what table have to be get generated. Another thing what we do inside Hibernate mapping document is we will going to say that for the particular property, this property ID, what column should have to be get generated. For this string name, what particular column should have to be get generated. For email, what column should have to be get generated. We are also going to mention in Hibernate mapping document that on which column we want to provide primary key. So this is Hibernate mapping document, we also called as hibernate.xml, hbm.xml, Hibernate hbm.xml. Now it's turn for Hibernate cfg.xml. So Hibernate cfg.xml is basically called as Hibernate configuration document. Hibernate configuration document. So what we are going to do inside Hibernate configuration document. Basically, when we are working with JDBC, we have to provide the connector of database that with which database we want to work, like MySQL or Oracle. We have to build those .jar files inside our program. So in Hibernate configuration document, Hibernate CFG XML, what we are going to do is that we are going to tell that with which database we are going to work. We have to mention those things in Hibernate configuration document. We have to provide the URL of that particular driver, like com.mysql.jdbc.driver. In case of Oracle, we have oracle.jdbc.driver.oracle driver. We are mentioning these things in the JDBC. So we have to also configure those things inside Hibernate. Otherwise, how Hibernate is going to know that with which database we are going to work? We have to provide the usernames, passwords of corresponding database that we are working with. What else we have to do in configuration document? We also have to mention that which database, what SQL statement Hibernate have to create. You remember Hibernate runtime system. Hibernate runtime system is also going to give us SQL queries by default. But in case of Oracle and MySQL databases, some queries are different. In Oracle and MySQL, all queries are not same. So we have to tell the Hibernate runtime system that with which database we are working with. So we have to tell that for what database you have to create the SQL statement. We have to mention that please create the SQL statement of MySQL. So create the SQL statement of Oracle. We have to mention these things in Hibernate configuration document. What we have to mention? With which database we are working. Corresponding username, URL, password for that database. We have to tell the Hibernate configuration document that for what database you have to create the SQL statement. So all these configuration things we are going to do inside the Hibernate configuration document, which is going to be hibernate.cfg.xml. Then again these codes come that we already have gone through before. We are going to create the customer object of this class, going to provide the values of these properties, and we are going to use this method. What this method is going to do? It will go to the Hibernate runtime system. Hibernate runtime system is going to create the corresponding table automatically that we are going to mention in Hibernate mapping. Like for this customer, which table have to be created, what is the name of the table, what is the column name that have to be created, and inside that column value will get inserted in our database. So basically this is the, you can say, the whole mapping, whole elaboration thing of Hibernate, how Hibernate actually works. Let's go through all this quickly once more time. We have our customer class. We are going to tell in Hibernate mapping document that for this customer class, which table have to be get created and what is going to be the name of that particular table. For this property variable, which column is going to created and what is going to be the name of that column. Same like for name and email, which column have to be get created and what is going to be the name of that column. We are also going to tell in the Hibernate mapping document that on which column from these three we want to provide the primary key. And in Hibernate configuration document, we will configure that with what database we are working with, what is going to be the URL of the database, what will our username and password is. We are going to tell Hibernate that for which database you have to create the SQL statement, because Hibernate is going to create the SQL statement by itself, and for different databases some SQL statements are different, SQL queries are different. So all those things we are going to configure in Hibernate configuration document. Then we are going to create the object of customer. We are going to provide values as argument. We are going to run some methods, and by running these methods, these values is going to get inserted inside the corresponding columns of a table. Like for ID, 10 is going to get inserted inside the column of corresponding ID. Raj is going to get inserted in the column name that we have created in the Hibernate mapping document. This email is going to get inserted inside the corresponding email column of the table customer. And all these things is going to get happened through the Hibernate runtime system. Hibernate runtime system is going to take this object and get values from this and create the SQL queries and populate those queries with these values of this object of customer, and then call JDBC API internally. We don't have to work with JDBC programs, and JDBC API will go through the JDBC implementation, and then our data will get inserted inside the database. We have to build the jar files of JDBC, that with which database we are working with, because Hibernate can't do that by itself. Logically, we have to tell Hibernate that with which database we are working with. So we have to do that in when we are building the .jar files. So this is the whole roadmap of Hibernate. You can say that this is all what Hibernate provides us. This is all what Hibernate solves the problems. We have gone through the Hibernate basics. We have seen the problems that is arising in case of JDBC, and all these problems, you can see all these problems. Table will created by itself, primary key will be created by itself, values inside the column of primary key will get populated by itself, driver class get loaded by itself, connection will get taken by itself, JDBC statement will got created by Hibernate runtime system, SQL statement will get created by Hibernate runtime system, JDBC get populated statement get populated with SQL statement by itself. All those things are going to get pushed inside the database by itself. Resource will get closed by itself, connection and statement, JDBC statements. These all problem statement of JDBC get resolved through Hibernate automatically. And what another thing is happened, in case of JDBC, we provide values inside the SQL statement, but here we connected our tables inside the database with classes. So for this class, corresponding table will automatically get generated. For these properties variables, corresponding columns will automatically get generated, and also value will get inserted. Basically, that's all what Hibernate is all about. We connected our table inside the database with the corresponding classes, and from those properties inside the class we create the corresponding columns inside the table of database, and through couples of methods values get populated inside the table. We will go through couple more classes, theory classes of Hibernate, then we will write our first code of Hibernate. So stay tuned for next video.